Thus, under Disney's own interpretation of the contract, a consumer who purchases a combo pack for his child or relative and proceeds to give that combo pack to a family member as a gift has now violated the purchase agreement and is subject to suit for breach of contract, notwithstanding Disney's representation that it is unlikely to ever bring such a claim. This improper leveraging of Disney's copyright in the digital content to restrict secondary transfers of physical copies directly implicates and conflicts with public policy enshrined in the Copyright Act and constitutes copyright misuse. Hello everyone, I'm Leonard French, your favorite copyright attorney, and I'm here today to talk to you about the remarkable order that just came down in the Disney versus Redbox case. Now, you might remember that Disney sued Redbox, and then Redbox sued Disney, and then Disney asked for a preliminary injunction forcing Redbox to stop selling the digital download codes that Redbox gets when it buys a multi-pack of a DVD, a Blu-ray, and a digital download code in a triple pack in a retail store. Because remember, Redbox has to buy all their stuff at retail because they don't have a vendor agreement with Disney. So Redbox does all of this, and then Redbox separates, and the DVD and the Blu-ray are available for rental in Redbox's kiosks. But if you go to a kiosk that does this, you can also buy a digital download code, which literally is the piece of paper that comes in the box or whatever, or it's ripped out of the thing, and then you separately purchase that and you get to keep your digital download code, which then can be tied to your Disney account or whatever, and you can have access to that digital movie. Well, Disney does not like this practice at all, thinking that this is some kind of unbundling in violation of some kind of contract or some kind of copyright violation or something. So let's talk about the injunction then that Disney asked for, because Disney asked for an injunction to stop all of this before it proves its case. Disney is asking the judge to grant them an order that says that Redbox can't do this. Well, not only did Judge Pregerson of the Central District of California disagree with what Disney is saying and asking for, he flat out accused Disney of attempting to misuse their copyrights, attempting to use their copyrights beyond the scope of copyright. Now, some media outlets are being a little premature and saying that Disney has been found liable or found guilty of copyright misuse. That's really not what's happened here. Nor has Redbox been found to be doing anything correct with the sale of the digital download code. The judge does have some things to say about that, but this is just an order that denies the preliminary injunction. We still have to have further findings and an order on what that means, on what that copyright misuse accusation actually means, and whether Redbox's sale of those digital download codes is permitted or is not. There's two areas of law that I want to kind of prime you with before we read this order that I think will make this more enjoyable for you. The first here is the doctrine of copyright misuse, just so you know what it is. I mean, I even wanted to refresh myself before we began talking about it. Copyright misuse is a defense against copyright infringement in the U.S., allowing copyright infringers to avoid liability if the copyright holder has engaged in improper or abusive conduct in exploiting or enforcing the copyright. It's comparable to the unclean hands doctrine or patent misuse, which bars a party from obtaining relief, like an injunction, against another party when they have acted improperly, when the original party asking for the injunction is acting improperly. In copyright, the doctrine forbids a copyright owner from attempting to extend the effect or operation of the copyright beyond the scope of their statutory rights. And they give the example here of a restrictive license agreement that is contrary to public policy as being an example of copyright misuse. The other doctrine that I'd like you to be aware of is the first sale doctrine, which says that if you buy a copy, you have the right to dispose of that copy by sale or gift, however you so choose. You don't own the underlying copyright, but you do own that particular hard copy of the thing. And so this is the first sale doctrine, an important legal concept in U.S. copyright and trademark law that limits certain rights of the owners. It establishes a distribution chain for copyrighted products, library lending, giving, video rentals, and secondary markets for copyrighted works. And we'll go over that in a little greater detail when Judge Pregerson talks about it in his opinion. So without further ado, let's get to Judge Pregerson's remarkable opinion. This is Disney Enterprises versus Redbox Automated Retail in the U.S. District Court for the Central District of California, and this is an order denying plaintiff's motion for a preliminary injunction. This is not the findings at the end of a trial. This is just the denial of a motion for, in this case, a preliminary injunction. Presently before the court is plaintiff's motion for a preliminary injunction. Having considered the submissions of the parties, the court denies the motion and adopts the following order. Background. Disney owns the copyrights to several well-known movies including Beauty and the Beast, Frozen, Star Wars, Rogue One, Guardians of the Galaxy. Disney distributes its films in multiple formats, including DVD, Blu-ray, on-demand streaming, etc. Among Disney's offerings are combo packs. Combo packs feature large type text reading Blu-ray, DVD, digital HD, and include a Blu-ray disc, a DVD, and a piece of paper containing an alphanumeric code. The alphanumeric code can be inputted or redeemed at redeemdigitalmovies.com or disneysmoviesanywhere.com to allow a user to instantly stream and download with digital HD. The exteriors of the combo pack boxes state in somewhat smaller print near the bottom third of the box that the codes are not for sale or transfer. Very fine print at the bottom of the boxes indicates, with respect to digital HD, that terms and conditions apply. The download code insert within the combo pack instructs consumers to 1. Visit redeemdigitalmovie.com or Disney Movies Anywhere, 2. Enter the alphanumeric code printed on the insert, and 3. Enjoy your movie. The insert, like the exterior of the combo pack packaging, also states codes are not for sale or transfer. The Redeem Digital Movies and Disney Movies Anywhere web pages each set forth additional terms and conditions to use. The former states that plaintiff Buena Vista Home Entertainment retains ownership of the codes and authorizes only their conditional use. The page also states that by redeeming a code, the user represents that he is the owner of the physical product that accompanied the digital code at the time of purchase. The redemption of a digital code sold or transferred separate from the original physical product is prohibited. The more substantial Movies Anywhere click-wrap terms provide that only members with registered Movies Anywhere accounts who have by definition agreed to Movies Anywhere's terms of use can take advantage of Movies Anywhere service. Among the terms of use are terms concerning digital copy code redemption, which provides that a consumer can enter authorized digital copy codes from a digital copy-enabled physical product that is owned by that consumer. The terms further state that the sale, distribution, purchase, or transfer of digital copy codes is strictly prohibited. The Movies Anywhere terms of use also state that Movies Anywhere grants the registered user a limited personal use, non-transferable, non-assignable, revocable, non-exclusive, and non-sublicensable right to stream or download movies and to use the service. The terms of service expressly restrict users' right to copy the copyrighted works, except in accordance with the Movies Anywhere terms of service. Defendant Redbox Automated Retail rents and sells movies to consumers via tens of thousands of automated kiosks that dispense DVDs and Blu-ray discs. Redbox also offers a Redbox On Demand service that allows consumers to stream or download movies owned by studios other than Disney. More recently, Redbox began offering digital downloads of Disney movies in the form of download codes. Because Redbox does not have a vendor agreement with Disney, Redbox acquires Disney films by purchasing copies at retail outlets such as electronics stores, grocery stores, and the like. Redbox purchases standalone Blu-rays and DVDs as well as Disney's combo packs. Redbox obtains digital download codes for Disney movies by purchasing combo packs and removing the piece of paper bearing the download code from Disney's packaging. Redbox then places the piece of paper bearing the code into its own Redbox packaging and offers the code for sale at a Redbox kiosk. Disney's complaint alleges that Redbox's resale of combo pack digital download codes 1 constitutes contributory copyright infringement insofar as it encourages end users to make unauthorized reproductions of Disney's copyrighted works. 2 is a breach of the contract Redbox enters into with Buena Vista when Redbox purchases combo packs. 3 interferes with Disney's contracts with RedeemDigitalMovie.com users. And 4 violates California false advertising and unfair competition laws. Disney now moves for a preliminary injunction enjoining Redbox from, among other things, selling or transferring Disney digital download codes. Preliminary relief may be warranted where a party 1 shows a combination of probable success on the merits and the possibility of irreparable harm, or 2 raises serious questions on such matters and shows that the balance of hardships tips in favor of an injunction. The party must demonstrate a fair chance of success on the merits and a significant threat of irreparable injury absent the issuance of the requested injunctive relief. Discussion. Breach of contract. Disney contends that Redbox entered into a contract with Disney when Redbox purchased and opened Disney combo packs that included, on the outside of the packaging, the phrase, "Codes are not for sale or transfer." The elements of a breach of contract claim are 1. The existence of a contract, 2. Performance or excuse for non-performance, 3. Defendant's breach, and 4. Damages. A valid contract requires capable consenting parties, a lawful object, and sufficient cause or consideration. In California, a contract for sale or goods may be made in any manner sufficient to show agreement, including conduct by both parties, which recognizes the existence of such contract. In general, silence or inaction does not constitute acceptance of an offer. Nevertheless, a party's voluntary acceptance of the benefit of an offer may constitute consent to a contract. At the same time, however, even a party that has accepted an offered benefit cannot be deemed to have accepted a contract if the offeree did not have reasonable notice that an offer had been made. In the case of Norcia, the defendant sought to enforce the terms of an arbitration agreement set forth within a brochure that was located inside a product box, and which therefore could not be accessed or viewed by the consumer without opening the product packaging after purchase. The defendant contended that the plaintiff had consented to the arbitration terms because, notwithstanding the absence of any terms on the outside of the packaging, the brochure was analogous to a shrink-wrap license, which states on the outside of a product package that the user agrees to further as yet undisclosed license terms by opening up the packaging. Plaintiff asserts that the instant case is distinguishable from Norcia because Norcia deals with shrink-wrap licenses, the terms of which are found inside the box or when software is booted up. The Norcia court defined a shrink-wrap license as a form on the packaging or on the outside of a CD-ROM containing software which states that by opening the packaging or CD-ROM wrapper, the user agrees to the terms. Here, Norcia is distinguishable only to the extent that Disney contends that a single phrase on the exterior of its combo pack packaging constitutes a box-top license agreement to which Redbox consented when it opened the combo pack, as opposed to shrink-wrap notices of further license restrictions stated elsewhere, such as within the box or on the redemption service portals. The court notes that although the box tops contain terms and conditions apply in fine print, Disney's breach of contract arguments do not rely upon that shrink-wrap license type language, and as noted above, Disney disclaims the existence of any shrink-wrap license. In any event, the issue in Norcia, as here, was whether external packaging put the offeree on notice that he was accepting a contract by opening the box. Accepting the analogy for sake of argument, the court nevertheless rejected the defendant's position. Although acknowledging that a shrink-wrap license might be enforceable under California law, the court held that the plaintiff's silence could not be deemed acceptance where there was no indication on the outside of the packaging that opening the box would constitute acceptance of further terms set forth inside the box. Disney argues here that the circumstances are more similar to those before the court in Arizona Cartridge Remanufacturers Association v. Lexmark There, the plaintiff brought false advertising and unfair competition claims based on an allegation that the defendant was misleading consumers into thinking that contractual terms printed upon the outside of a printer cartridge box were enforceable. Because the case involved license terms ostensibly printed in their entirety on the outside of the product packaging, the court distinguished shrink wrap license disputes and other cases involving lack of notice at the time of purchase that additional terms applied. With that understanding, the court analyzed the following box top license language. The language read, "Please read before opening. Opening of this package or using the patented cartridge inside confirms your acceptance of the following license agreement. Sold at a special price. Following the initial use, you return the empty cartridge. If you don't accept these terms, return the unopened package to your point of purchase. A regular price cartridge without these terms is available." The court rejected the plaintiff's argument, holding that the box top language was sufficient to constitute an enforceable contract that consumers accepted by opening the box. The court explained that the contract was enforceable because by its own terms it gave notice of the existence of a license, set forth the conditions of sale of that license, afforded the consumer an opportunity to read the terms of the contract before deciding whether to accept them, and provided consideration in the form of a reduced price, thus supporting the conclusion that a consumer who opened the box accepted the terms. The question before this court, then, is whether language on the combo packs stating that codes are not for sale or transfer is, like the box top language in Lexmark, an enforceable license, and whether Redbox's decision to open the combo pack packaging notwithstanding that language constitutes acceptance of that license. At this stage, whether considering the combo pack language as a shrink wrap or box top license, Disney has not demonstrated a likelihood of success on the merits of that question. The phrase "codes are not for sale or transfer" cannot constitute a shrink wrap contract because, like the box top at issue in Norcia, Disney's combo pack box makes no suggestion that opening the box constitutes acceptance of any further license restrictions. Although Disney seeks to analogize its combo pack packaging and language to the packaging and terms in Lexmark, the comparison is inapt. The thorough box top license language in Lexmark not only provided consumers with specific notice of the existence of a license and explicitly stated that opening the package would constitute acceptance, but also set forth the full terms of the agreement, including the nature of the consideration provided, and described a post-purchase mechanism for rejecting the license. Here, in contrast, Disney relies solely on the phrase "codes are not for sale or transfer" to carry all of that weight. Unlike the box top language in Lexmark, Disney's phrase does not identify the existence of a license offer in the first instance, let alone identify the nature of any consideration, specify any means of acceptance, or indicate that the consumer's decision to open the box will constitute assent. In the absence of any such indications that an offer was being made, Redbox's silence cannot reasonably be interpreted as assent to a restrictive license. Suppose, for example, that a bulk package of pencils stated individual pencils not for resale, but that a bulk package pencil purchaser nevertheless resold a single pencil. It is doubtful that the manufacturer would be able to state a colorable claim for breach of contract or credibly argue that the consumer assented to a license. Although the distinction between physical goods like pencils and arguably intangible products like a digital download code may be relevant in other contexts, no party has suggested that the nature of the product has any effect on its notice requirements or other traditional elements of contract formation. Indeed, the presence of other similarly assertive but unquestionably non-binding language on the combo packs casts further doubt upon the argument that the phrase "not for sale or transfer" communicates the terms or existence of a valid offer. The product packaging also states, for example, that this product cannot be resold or rented individually. This prescription is demonstrably false, at least insofar as it pertains to the Blu-ray disc and DVD portions of the combo pack. The Copyright Act explicitly provides that the owner of a particular copy is entitled, without the authority of the copyright owner, to sell or otherwise dispose of the possession of that copy. Thus, the clearly unenforceable "cannot be resold individually" language conveys nothing so much as Disney's preference about consumers' future behavior, rather than the existence of a binding agreement. At this stage, it appears that the accompanying "not for sale or transfer" language plays a similar role. Although Disney concedes that any attempt to curtail the secondary distribution of Blu-rays and DVDs would not be successful, Disney maintains that any transfer of a combo pack in its entirety would necessarily violate the supposed contract because the download code portion of the combo pack is non-transferable. Thus, under Disney's own interpretation of the contract, a consumer who purchases a combo pack for his child or relative and proceeds to give that combo pack to a family member as a gift has now violated the purchase agreement and is subject to suit for breach of contract, notwithstanding Disney's representation that it is unlikely to ever bring such a claim. Accordingly, Disney has failed to meet its burden to demonstrate a likelihood of success on the merits of its breach of contract claim. On contributory copyright infringement, the judge writes, Disney's first cause of action alleges that Redbox contributorily infringes upon Disney's copyrights by enabling and encouraging individual consumers to violate the Redeeming Digital Movies and Disney Movies Anywhere use licenses and in the process create unauthorized reproductions of Disney's copyrighted works. A copyright owner does have the exclusive right to reproduce the copyrighted work. A defendant is contributorily liable for copyright infringement if he has intentionally induced or encouraged direct infringement. A copyright licensee infringes upon a copyright if he exceeds the scope of his license. To prevail on a claim of copyright infringement, the owner must prove copying of protectable expression beyond the scope of the license. A restrictive license exists where the copyright owner 1. Specifies that the user is granted a license, 2. Significantly restricts the user's ability to transfer the software, and 3. Imposes notable use restrictions. There is little doubt that the Redeeming Digital Movies and Movies Anywhere terms of service meet all of these criteria. The terms of the Redeem Digital Movies license state that plaintiff Buena Vista owns all digital movie codes and that users may only use digital codes as authorized. The terms further require that a user represent that he is the owner of the physical product that accompanied the digital code at the time of purchase, and expressly forbids the redemption of a digital code sold or transferred separate from the original physical product. The Movies Anywhere terms similarly specify that they comprise a license agreement and not an agreement for sale that creates any ownership interest in licensed content, provide that users can only enter authorized digital copy codes from a digital copy enabled physical product that is owned by that user, and state that the purchase of digital copy codes is strictly prohibited. By buying a standalone Disney code from Redbox and then redeeming that code on the licensed download service portals, end users necessarily violate the terms of the licenses and, Disney contends, therefore infringe upon Disney's copyrights. The court notes that defendants' opposition to plaintiff's argument regarding contributory infringement appears to misunderstand the nature of plaintiff's claims. Defendant argues that there is no license, and even plaintiffs do not claim one was created. Although that statement is arguably true with respect to the relationship between Disney and Redbox, Disney's contributory copyright infringement claim is predicated not upon that relationship, but upon the license agreement between the end user and downloader and one or both of the digital download services. Redbox also argues that Disney is engaged in copyright misuse because it is attempting to impose an artificial price floor by eliminating competition. Although copyright misuse may be rooted in anti-competitive behavior or public policy considerations, Redbox does not adequately develop its price-fixing theory. Nevertheless, Redbox argues that Disney cannot demonstrate a likelihood of success on the merits of its contributory copyright claim because Disney has engaged in copyright misuse. Copyright misuse is an affirmative defense that prevents copyright holders from leveraging their limited monopoly to allow them to control areas outside of the monopoly. Disney responds that it is not guilty of copyright misuse because it is not trying to extend its copyright over the underlying movies to other non-copyrighted products. Disney is correct that the copyright misuse defense often applies to situations in which copyright holders attempt to use their copyright to obtain some power over another non-copyrighted goods or services. In practice, Management Information Corporation versus American Medical Association, for example, the defendant misused its copyrights when it obtained an unfair advantage over its competitors by licensing a copyrighted software system on the condition that licensees agree not to use competitors' systems. In Omega Watch versus Costco Wholesale, the owner of a copyrighted design sought to use its copyrights to restrict sales of otherwise uncopyrightable watches. The watch seller frustrated the plaintiff's domestic distribution strategy by obtaining genuine watches abroad, then legitimately reselling them in the United States. In an attempt to foreclose this practice, the copyright holder began engraving a barely perceptible version of a copyrighted design onto the bottom of the watches, then sued the watch seller for copyright infringement. The district court concluded that the copyright holder had misused its copyright by leveraging its limited monopoly in being able to control the importation of the copyrighted design to control the importation of the watches. Here, Disney contends that its actions are distinguishable from those in Practice Management and Omega, because Disney's control of and restraints on digital downloads only pertain to the copyrighted work itself, not to other non-copyrighted products such as the competitor's code systems in Practice Management or the watches in Omega. The copyright misuse defense, however, is not so narrow as Disney would have it. Indeed, copyright misuse need not even be grounded in anti-competitive behavior and extends to any situation implicating the public policy embodied in the grant of a copyright. The pertinent inquiry, then, is not whether the digital download service's restrictive license terms give Disney power over some entirely unrelated product, but whether those terms improperly grant Disney power beyond the scope of its copyright. The Copyright Act gives copyright owners the exclusive right to distribute copies of the copyrighted work. That right is exhausted, however, once the owner places a copy of a copyrighted item into the stream of commerce by selling it. In other words, once a copyright owner transfers title to a particular copy of a work, the transferor is powerless to stop the transferee from redistributing that copy as he chooses. There can be no dispute, therefore, that Disney's copyrights do not give it the power to prevent consumers from selling or otherwise transferring the Blu-ray discs and DVDs contained within the combo packs. Disney does not contend otherwise. Nevertheless, the terms of both digital download services license agreements purport to give Disney a power specifically denied to copyright holders by 109A. Redeemed Digital Movies requires redeemers to represent that they are currently the owner of the physical product that accompanied the digital code at the time of purchase, while the Movies Anywhere terms of use only allow registered members to enter authorized digital copy codes from a digital copy-enabled physical product that is owned by that member. Redbox also argues that physical product includes the pieces of paper upon which the digital download code is printed, and that digital downloaders therefore do not violate any terms of use even when inputting a code purchased from Redbox. That argument has no merit. The paper insert, like the alphanumeric code it bears, has no value separate from the digital content that the code represents. Thus, combo pack purchasers cannot access digital movie content for which they have already paid without exceeding the scope of the license agreement unless they forego their statutorily granted right to distribute their physical copies of that same movie as they see fit. This improper leveraging of Disney's copyright in the digital content to restrict secondary transfers of physical copies directly implicates and conflicts with public policy enshrined in the Copyright Act and constitutes copyright misuse. Accordingly, Disney has not demonstrated a likelihood of success on the merits of its contributory copyright infringement claim. At argument, Disney suggested that consumers can contract away their redistribution rights. To the extent that Disney suggests that occurred here, that argument has no merit for the reasons described in the breach of contract discussion above. The court notes that the public policy considerations underlying the copyright misuse defense raise serious questions about Disney's ability to demonstrate that an injunction essentially ratifying Disney's misuse would nevertheless be in the public interest. As alluded to in the context of the box top and shrink wrap license discussion above, significant questions remain regarding the representations made to consumers on the combo pack packaging. Disney characterizes the purchase of digital HD as effectively the purchase of a coupon that will allow consumers to download digital content only if they agree to the license in the future. Although beyond the scope of a briefing here, the question whether the representations made on the box actually support Disney's characterizations or give rise to other legal or equitable defenses to allegations of infringement and other potential claims casts further doubt upon Disney's likelihood of success. So this is pretty significant. The judge is accusing Disney of misusing their copyrights, But this is in a preliminary injunction denial. So this isn't an order slapping Disney on the wrist or finding that Disney has misused their copyrights and therefore they have to do something. That's going to have to come later. We don't know what the judge's response to this is yet. It's just really, really significant that the judge has publicly stated in an opinion and order that Disney's copyrights are being misused insofar as they are being used to prevent a consumer from selling or distributing their DVD or Blu-ray and keeping the digital download code, something that I think even I am guilty of. So I'm kind of glad to hear that I'm not guilty of copyright infringement, and that if Disney keeps enforcing that, they're going to lose the ability to enforce those copyrights, which is the punishment for copyright misuse. Now, the judge is going to continue here and go on into the first sale doctrine. Let's see what Judge Pregerson has to say. Much of the parties' briefing and argument focuses on Redbox's contention that Disney's attempts to prohibit transfer of the digital download codes are barred by first sale. For the reasons stated above, the issues presently before the court can be resolved irrespective of the first sale doctrine question. Indeed, at this stage of the proceedings, it appears to the court that the first sale doctrine is not applicable to this case. The first sale doctrine, recognized first by the Supreme Court and later codified, allows the owner of a particular copy or phonorecord lawfully made under the Copyright Act to sell or otherwise dispose of that possession of that copy or phonorecord without the permission of the copyright holder. Thus, as explained above, a copyright owner's exclusive right to distribute a particular copy of a copyrighted work is exhausted once the owner transfers title to that copy. Not all transfers of a copy of a copyrighted work constitute a transfer of title sufficient to trigger exhaustion of the copyright holder's distribution rights. Under certain conditions, a transferee may be a licensee rather than an owner and will not enjoy the protections of the first sale doctrine. Redbox spends much of its opposition arguing that Disney's transfer of a digital code in the combo pack does not bear the indicia of a license and therefore should be considered a transfer of title to a particular copy. This argument misses the thrust of Disney's position regarding the first sale doctrine. Disney does not argue that it transferred a restrictive license rather than a title to a digital copy, but rather that the first sale doctrine does not apply here for the fundamental reason that the digital download codes are not copies in the first instance, let alone particular copies. For copyright purposes, copies are material objects other than phonorecords, in which a work is fixed for any method now known or later developed, and from which the work can be perceived, reproduced, or otherwise communicated, either directly or with the aid of a machine or device. By Disney's reading, no copy exists until the copyrighted work is fixed onto the downloader's hard drive, and Redbox's purchase of a download code therefore cannot possibly involve a particular copy to which a first sale defense could apply. Thus, Disney contends this case is solely about the exclusive right to reproduce a copyrighted work and has nothing to do with the right of distribution or, by extension, the first sale doctrine's limitation on that exclusive right. One court that addressed a similar issue applied similar logic to that which Disney puts forth here. In Capitol Records versus Redigi, the defendant attempted to create a marketplace for used digital music downloads by devising a technology that migrated a seller's digital music files. The defendant attempted to create a marketplace for used digital music downloads by devising a technology that migrated a seller's digital music file from the seller's computer, data packet by data packet, onto the defendant's server, from whence it could then again be migrated to a secondary purchaser's computer without any bit of data ever existing in any two places at the same time. On summary judgment, the court rejected the defendant's first sale doctrine defense, regardless of the defendant's claim that no datum existed in two places at the same time. The court observed that the digital files at issue could not be resold without a new version first being created on the defendant's physical server. Thus, the court concluded the new version was not the same particular copy, but rather an unauthorized reproduction of the copyrighted work. Put another way, the first sale defense is limited to material items like records that the copyright owner put into the stream of commerce. With respect respect to the right of reproduction, the Redigi Court rejected the first sale defense out of hand as inapplicable. The Redigi Court's discussion of the first sale defense concerned the plaintiff's exclusive distribution right, which applies only to copies or phonorecords. Phonorecords, like copies, are defined as material objects. Nevertheless, no party disputed that an electronic transfer of a copyrighted work constitutes a distribution for copyrighted purposes. One court, in determining that electronic files qualify as phonorecords, has stated that electronic files are material objects. As the Londonshire Court elaborated, however, more accurately, the appropriate segment of the hard disk is the phonorecord within the meaning of the statute. Policy considerations also supported the Redigi Court's conclusion. In 2001, the U.S. Copyright Office, at Congress' command, prepared a report on, among other things, the effect of emerging technologies on copyright law. The Copyright Office engaged in a lengthy discussion of the first sale doctrine, including the rationales underpinning the doctrine as it relates to tangible goods in the physical world. The Copyright Office specifically addressed the potential implications of expressly expanding the first sale doctrine to permit the transmission of a digital work by the owner of a lawful copy of that work, so long as the copy is destroyed. Ultimately, the USCO recommended that the first sale doctrine not be explicitly expanded to include digital transmission. The report explained, "Physical copies of works degrade with time and use, making used copies less desirable than new ones. Digital information does not degrade and can be reproduced perfectly on the recipient's computer. The used copy is just as desirable as, in fact is indistinguishable from, a new copy of the same work. Time, space, effort, and cost no longer act as barriers to the movement of copies, since digital copies can be transmitted nearly instantaneously anywhere in the world with minimal effort and negligible cost. The need to transport physical copies of works, which acts as a natural brake on the effect of resales on the copyright owner's market, no longer exists in the realm of digital transmissions. The ability of such used copies to compete for market share with new copies is thus far greater in the digital world. Even the lending of a fairly small number of copies of a work by digital transmission could substitute for a large number of purchases. For example, one could devise an aggregation site on the internet that stores, or in peer-to-peer model points to, multiple copies of an electronic book. Users can borrow a copy of the book for as long as he or she is actually reading it. Once the book is closed, it is returned and back in circulation. Unlike a typical lending library where the book, once lent to a patron, is out of circulation for days or weeks at a time, the electronic book in this scenario is available to other readers at any moment that it is not actually being read. Since at any given time only a limited number of readers will actually be reading the book, a small number of copies can supply the demand of a much larger audience. The effect of this activity on the copyright owner's market for the work is far greater than the effect of the analogous activity in the non-digital world. These differences between circulation of tangible and intangible copies is directly relevant to the balance between copyright owners and users in Section 109. In weighing the detrimental effect of a digital first sale doctrine on copyright owners' markets against the furtherance of the policies behind the first sale doctrine, it must be acknowledged that the detrimental effect increases significantly in the online environment. In the final analysis, the concerns about expanding first sale to limit the reproduction right, harm to the market as a result of the ease of distribution, and the lessened deterrent effect of the law that could promote piracy outweigh the pro-competitive gains that might be realized from the creation of a digital first sale doctrine. Notwithstanding Redigi, the plain language of the statutes, and the important policy considerations described by the Copyright Office, Redbox urges this court to conclude that Disney's sale of a download code is indistinguishable from the sale of a tangible physical particular copy of a copyrighted work that has simply not yet been delivered. Even assuming that the transfer is a sale and not a license, and putting aside what Disney's representations on the box might suggest about whether or not a copy is being transferred, this court cannot agree that a particular material object can be said to exist, let alone be transferred, prior to the time that a download code is redeemed and the copyrighted work is fixed onto the downloader's physical hard drive. Instead, Disney appears to have sold something akin to an option to create a physical copy at some point in the future. Because no particular fixed copy of a copyrighted work yet existed at the time Redbox purchased or sold a digital download code, the first sale doctrine is inapplicable to this case. For the reasons stated above, Disney has failed to demonstrate a likelihood of success on the merits. The court need not therefore address the remaining preliminary injunction factors. Plaintiff's motion for preliminary injunction is denied. It is so ordered. Dean Pregerson, United States District Judge. So that's pretty significant. Now we should stop short of cheering and hollering that Disney is guilty of copyright misuse and has therefore lost all of its copyrights. That's not how this works. First, the judge is basically saying that they don't get a preliminary injunction because of their misuse. That's the punishment. They don't get a preliminary injunction because of the misuse of their copyright. Now, what else will happen from here? Well, the case is going to go on, and the judge is going to hear on both sides evidence and argument about this sale of the digital download code and what the damages might be there, and if that is copyright infringement or some kind of contractual breach or something like that, then Redbox will owe Disney something. We haven't even hit trial stage yet. When the judge hears all the information and the arguments, we'll get to hear more about the judge's interpretation of the first sale doctrine and the digital download code and whether Redbox is engaged in some kind of breach or something, or whether the copyright misuse makes Redbox's breach unremediable, no damages can be found at court because of Disney's copyright misuse. Maybe. We'll see. I'm not predicting it. I'm just saying that's a possibility. So thank you for staying with me for this. This was a really long one. I really appreciate it, but it's really interesting stuff, this Disney copyright misuse stuff. I really find it absolutely fascinating. Thank you to all of my supporters. You may remember that this is a supporter-driven channel. We have patreon.com/ljfrench, which is where you can go and support as a patron, as a monthly patron. $5 gets you on my LED panel. $50 gets you mentioned by name. Speaking of, the $50 plus supporters for February are John Steele, Gavin Barnard, The Godslain, Evie, Andy, Kyle Mudrak, John H. Anderson, and Veramantane. Thank you all very much for your support. The rest of the $5 plus supporters are in the description below and on that panel, as I said. We also have audibletrial.com/lawfulmasses if you would like to listen to any of the fascinating audiobooks that we have listed in the description, or that Audible just has in general. I personally am listening to Bill Browder's Red Notice right now, which is a way more fascinating tale of corruption in Russia than I expected. Bill Browder is a foreign investor. How interesting could a book be by a foreign investor? No. Everything happened to this guy, and he basically ran headfirst into the corruption that is the oligarchy in Russia. And they killed people in response. So the book is about all of that, and you should read it because it's really, really good and really compelling. It builds a little bit, and then about halfway through, bam, it just starts going. So that's basically what happened to him. It was nice, smooth sailing for a period of time, and then stuff happened. Don't forget that we've got the live show on Sunday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern on twitch.tv/LeonardFrench, and there's a special video dropping, a Let's Play that I did with John from On the Branch Gaming. That'll be posted along with that tomorrow afternoon as well. So thank you everyone for joining me. I'm Leonard French, your favorite copyright attorney, and I'll see you in my next video. Have a good one.